Welcome to the Scholar's Chair. At Focus is a controversial discussion concerning women's rights to physical health from an interfaith perspective. Our guests are Martha Woody from the Jewish tradition, Dr. Fatimah Jackson from the Islamic tradition, and Dr. Mary Baker from the secular humanist philosophy. In the year of 2024, what are the educated women's concerns for their rights to physical health?
As I was putting this program together, one of the things that struck me is the First Amendment of our Constitution doesn't provide for the autonomy of one's body, and I found that interesting. Why it didn't include it, but it was, maybe it was because slavery was such a big deal to the founding fathers. The First Amendment actually provides Congress to make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It protects freedom of speech, the press, the assembly, and the right to petition the government against redress of grievances, and that's well known by everyone. But what struck me is that did not provide any any protections for reproductive health and or the autonomy of one's personal being, which was very striking. And I think that the World Health Organization took note of that, and it published the idea that every person's right to control their sexuality and reproductive health, is linked to their human rights. And I wanted to ask everyone before we get started, do you agree with that? And Martha, I will start with you.
If you don't have control over your own physical being in this world, then I'm speechless, basically, because I just, in some ways it makes me a little more sympathetic. And Mary, I'm certainly sorry that you're dealing with COVID again. But it makes me a little more sympathetic to the people who said, you can't make me wear a mask, or you can't make me do this or do that because I have bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, those are the same people now saying, oh, but I get to tell you, and I understand, and again, I can understand some of their arguments in that regard. But on the other hand, there's a disconnect, and I would say a hypocrisy there, to say you can't make me wear a mask, but I can tell every woman what she is allowed to do. And by extension, all the people that, her family, her physicians, her medical care, all of that, I get to determine. Someone other than that person gets to determine what's going to happen.
Yes. I think that everybody is challenged with that idea, particularly in this environment. It seems that since our constitutional rights are being challenged more than I have seen in a while. Dr. Fatimah, please let me know, what are your thoughts? You think that every person have right to control their sexuality and reproductive health? Is it linked to our human rights?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me give my greetings to all of your participants. We seem to be on the same page, and you wonder then, why are we so at variance with what is going on right now in our blessed country? And the human rights are fundamental to the human existence. So indeed, one of the great attributes in Islam was that women were recognized for the individuals they were, and not the property of any person. And we find that theme throughout our sister religions. But I wonder then, what leg are people standing on today when they say such reactionary and backward things that imprison a woman, that deny her fundamental control of her body? So, yes, in Islam, that would be consistent with the Islamic belief that human rights, women's rights are human rights. Indeed, human rights are essential to all creatures, all human beings on this planet, male or female.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to get started. Mary, your thoughts?
So beyond what's already been said, I'm just thinking about that thing I do when I try to decide whether something's fair, and it's turn it around. And if it's fair the other way around, then maybe it's fair. And it does seem to me that men have an awful lot more control over their bodily autonomy. I mean, I can literally get a prescription for an erectile dysfunction drug by email, just by saying, I need it. And there's women who can't get simple access. We're not even talking abortions. They can't even get good health care. So
Yes.
to me, that's saying that no matter what, somewhere deep down in our psyche, we're still not seeing men and women as equal.
Mm-hmm. Worse is that it seems like men have some notion, at least systemically, that they own women, and that becomes even more problematic.
Yes.
Let me go to maybe the question that gives me the reason to have this discussion with all of you, and that is that we're suffering the problem with Roe now, and it seems to me that our Supreme Court has done sort of like a horrible, what's the word?
They punted. They basically did what people wanted to do with slavery and claim it was states' rights. They just
Right.
Yes.
I think that's correct. Curious, is abortion of a child an option in your philosophical and theological perspectives? Martha, let's start with you.
Okay. So Judaism is a patriarchal religion. I mean, traditionally began as a patriarchal religion.
Yeah.
There's been some, obviously, and I think this is true for any religion. I am familiar with how true it is in Judaism, that there is a central core that remains the same and an ever expanding periphery where as we hopefully as a human race evolve, that things change, and we need to be able to incorporate those changes based on basic principles. But women in Judaism, I mean, I think you can argue it both ways, but I'll try to be succinct here, that women and men were viewed as having different roles. Interestingly enough, I came across the phrase separate but equal, and I thought, oh, how interesting.
Right.
Right. But at the same time, women did have rights in Judaism, traditionally rights to property. The women in a marriage had the right to sexual relations. It was not the right of the man, the right of the wife. Traditionally, it was prohibited for a man to beat his wife or mistreat her. So there were, whether this was according to Jewish law or whether it was according to Jewish principles, but there have been some protections for women all along in Judaism. In Judaism, it is not until the fetus is viable outside the womb that terminating a pregnancy would be considered wrong, sinful, prohibited, not allowed, whatever.
Right.
And in the case in particular where a pregnancy is threatening the life of the mother, it is considered, and again, you kind of go back to the definition of killing versus murder. Murder is sinful. Killing someone is allowed under certain extreme circumstances. And one of those would be if they're trying to kill you.
Right.
And so in Judaism, the idea would be if that fetus is threatening the life of the mother, then it is allowed and appropriate for appropriate measures to be taken to save the life of the mother. And that life literally would take precedence because it's obviously a fully functional human being and as such deserves the right to continue living versus the potential life. And I think that's, again, that's a different interpretation from some other religious traditions, but it makes sense to me.
Yes. Yes. Dr. Fatimah, what are your views?
Well, abortion is allowed in Islam. I should tell you preferentially, however, the fetus is, the spirit enters the fetus 3 months after conception.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to conception, in the Islamic mindset, you're not really dealing with a whole human being. Abortion is allowed if the life of the mother, of course, is endangered, because the life of the mother, that's a full-fledged human being, whereas the fetus is a potential, and the spirit of that fetus just goes back to Allah. So it's not equivalent the way that I hear some people equating an embryo with a full-grown human being.
Mm-hmm.
If a crime has been committed in producing that fetus, reproduction is not obligatory. So you're not obliged to carry the fetus of your rapist, or as my husband would say, you don't have to call your rapist your lover.
Mm-hmm.
He's not.
Right.
And you're not obliged to carry his offspring. And in fact, women's rights, in many of the interpretations, the official interpretations of Islam that I've heard, are very strong in women have a right to orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
Women have a right to be satisfied in the sexual relationship. And men are not permitted to do things like coitus interruptus without the consent of women. So it's very hard in that setting to imagine that a woman would ever be required to carry a baby that was conceived under duress. So I think that's the foundation. I must say that Islam builds on both Christianity and Judaism.
Yeah.
And we're kind of being partitioned in the modern world into what we used to call it, Howard, the thinkers and the drinkers. So the thinkers subscribe to a higher reality, and the drinkers just do whatever the hell they want to do, and they name it Christianity, or they name it, conservative Judaism, or they name it conservative Christianity, but it's the same old oppression, the same old sexism, the same old racism, the same old hostility towards women, and fear of women, and therefore mandating requirements for women that are untenable if it were the other way around.
Yes, I think that's right. I think you've spelled out quite a bit there for males to think about. Mary, I'm hear from you.
Yeah, well, so as the secular humanist here, I come out as probably the most pro-life of us all. In that, I see the best way towards common ground is to make abortion safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah.
Make it unnecessary as much as possible. Teaching high school kids like I do, I can tell you the amount they don't know about just their own physiology and how to get pregnant and how not to get pregnant.
Yes.
It would turn your hair white overnight. Just it is amazing that these parents have not done their duty by their kids, and sometimes they fight it when the school tries to do the duty. Indeed,
Yeah.
in terms of, to me, the most pragmatic way forward is to just make it so that people don't get pregnant unless they want to, or make it possible for that to happen. And that just seems to be something that we fight left and right. That, you know, birth control is practically the defense against the dark arts class. I've had kids tell me, girls tell me that they're afraid to take the pill because they've been told it'll make them sterile for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
I pick my battles. That's where I'd like to fight first.
Yes. I think I thought that's where we were before our recent Congress, our recent Supreme Court action. Let's kind of push this towards, because we have a unique opportunity here. All of you are kind of scientifically bent. You know, you're depending on science to inform you of your professional activities. So I'm going to ask the question from that perspective. Do you think the scientific method is necessary in the contradiction of women's reproductive rights and religion? In other words, do you think the method is actually how we actually see the evolution of the baby in the womb coming to this world? Is it in contradiction to religious theology? Mary, let me start with you.
Oh, great.
Because you're a humanist among us. That's
yes, the humanist gets to say more so. So, I mean, science is not inherently ethical. That is always something to remember. It is, as somebody once said, the scientific method was a way of going wrong with certainty. We find out that it was wrong and then we fix it. But, you know, I mean, take the anthropologist's view of humans and sexuality, take the biochemist's view, take whatever view you want in terms of what is best for our species. And truthfully, what is best for our species is not having kids that aren't wanted.
Yes.
And I mean, we draw one of our locales that sends student to us is a halfway house, foster home for kids whose parents have just been the worst parents ever. And like, if I could have kept any one of them from having to go through what they went through, to have them know their parents didn't care about them, to have, you know, one of them told me my mother used to torture me and not feed us even though they had plenty of money. Just yeah, anything I could do to keep that from happening, I would.
So yes, so one have to think about the responsibility of family life before entering the activity, and I think that's something my grandmother used to tell me all the time. So I hear you, Martha.
And just quickly going to put in a plug for the UUs and their sex education class. Despite the fact that we're so open-minded and everything, the one thing we teach them is there is one way to not get pregnant, and that is to not have intercourse. So do everything but.
Yes.
Do everything but until you're ready to bring up a child, don't do that.
Yes, yeah. I think that's a very practical way of going forward. Martha, what are your views? And it's the scientific method of telling young people how children coming into this world is that in contradiction to the Jewish thought, or no?
Now, to me, science and religion are really answering different questions.
Yeah.
So,
Grandma.
there's a soccer game this afternoon. So, and if I had enough juice on my computer, I'd be outside, but that's beside the point.
Amen. Amen.
Science and religion are answering different questions. And so I don't have a problem with basically just kind of separating the two.
What would the question of science answer, and in contrast to the religious question?
Well, as Mary pointed out, I think science is trying to answer the question of what is, and religion is hopefully trying to lead us to what should be. And obviously, we may need some scientific answers in order to get to where we want to be, or need to be, or should be. But at the same time, I just lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
Yes. So I will say, and just because I don't want to forget to say this, I do want to say that two things. One is, somebody once described an embryo as the blueprint for a human being, just like there is a blueprint for a building, but the blueprint is not the building. And I think that has gotten us into some difficulty. The other thing, though, is I think hidden behind a lot of and I like to believe that there are people who are very sincere in what they consider their pro-life stance. At the same time, there is a great deal of misogyny that underlies this whole debacle, I think I'd call it at this point, about so criminalizing abortion, but at the same time, we don't want you to have birth control. And it's leaving half of the population really out of the realm of responsibility. And I think that's obviously something that should be addressed. So I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yes, actually you did. You did it in your specific way, and I appreciate that very much, Martha. Dr. Fatima, your views.
So I think I agree with what has been said, and I'll just try to build on it. The scientific method addresses how something happened. What's the underlying biochemistry? What's the underlying microbiology? What is the nuts and bolts? Whereas religion tells us why. And, why should we be good to each other? Why should we be tolerant? Why should we love one another? And then, as I understand, the Christian answer is because Jesus so loved the world. Well, where did Jesus learn it? Well, okay, so because Allah tells us we should love each other. So the religion gives us the why, science is giving us the how, and it's a huge error to take a very profound book like the Quran and pretend that it's a science book. It has scientific insights, but it's not the equivalent of modern science. What modern science has given us that is most relevant concerning female reproduction is technology to control it. So we can control our reproduction in ways that we were never able to do before. And this is a great time to be a woman and have access to the technology. In fact, we have gotten to the point of controlling the growth of the human being that I know a group in Israel produced what they called an entity, and it was a fertilized stem cell. So it wasn't even an embryo, it was a fertilized stem cell that they brought to about 14 weeks maturation. they cut it off at 14 weeks because they didn't want to deal with the philosophical ramifications of bringing that entity to term. They really couldn't call it a human being, but it was what some people in Alabama are calling a viable human being. But it was a stem cell that, that an adult stem cell that they had tricked into being an embryonic stem cell, and then encouraged it to divide, to replicate for 14 weeks on. So I remember showing my students a picture of that, what a 14-week-old human looks like, and in no way resembles any of us on the screen here. Now, as far as unwanted kids go, it's true that's the hypocrisy of many of those who espouse mandatory birth and make birth control illegal. Is that the children that are produced, they have no plan to provide for them. And in Islam, orphans, and there were many orphans because there's so many wars, we seem to be a very violent species. But we produce so many orphans, but even orphans had to keep the last name of their fathers. They couldn't take on the last name of the person who adopted them. And that speaks to me to the ultimate responsibility of the father. So as we talk about women's reproductive rights, what about men's reproductive rights?
That's another program.
But the two go hand in hand.
Yes, I think
because we didn't get pregnant by ourselves, although I'm sure some scientists are working on that.
It is a very serious matter, and we definitely have to address it.
Yes.
Dr. Fatimah, I want to give everyone this last question. I'm not going to get to all 10 of them with the time allotted us, but I wanted to just ask the last one to give our audience kind of something to think about on their way after this interview. And the question is, what can members of a free society do to improve women's right to control their own bodies? And we'll start where we ended here. Dr. Fatimah, would you start? What can a free society do to help women?
I saw your list. I saw that question on there, and I thought, boy, that is a tough question. But I must say that this recent push for mandatory reproduction, we have to acknowledge that it is within the context of a worldwide demographic shift. That were people, had they not presumed that instead of us being one species, we're somehow divided into some stupid notion like races, then they wouldn't be so fearful that the demographics are shifting, and that by 2050, we expect Europe to be the first so-called continent that will experience a demographic decline, an official decline, because in places like Japan, Korea, and much of Europe, the population is getting older. The people are not reproducing, so there's not the replacement. Hence the push for mandatory replacement in the United States. But because the United States is a multicultural society, multi-ethnic society, then that's a problem, because if you hold back birth control from Martha's children, then you hold it from Mary's children, then you hold it from Fatimah's children. But, the intention may be for Mary's children to reproduce, but maybe not Martha's and maybe not Fatimah's, So we understand that the demographic shift and the fear of the other is what's driving the pressure being put on women to have mandatory births. But it won't work, because we also understand that it's not the simple issue of you get pregnant, you have a baby, because there are many health issues associated with pregnancy.